This might be one of my most important and in-depth live streams and podcasts of the year. I'm not just saying that, I mean that. I'm about to go over a lot of information that a lot of people don't want to talk about, don't know about, or perhaps have just never heard before. So let's start with George Soros. To some, he's a philanthropist. To others, he's a controversial figure because he dumps a lot of money into causes in America and around the world. In their own words, Open Society Foundation says, the Open Society Foundations founded by George Soros are the world's largest private funder of independent groups working for justice, democratic governance, and human rights. We provide thousands of grants every year through a network of national and regional foundations and offices, funding a vast array of projects, many of them now shaped by the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, for the other side, Daily Mail reports George Soros-backed groups have spent $40 million to elect 75 progressive prosecutors over the last decade, meaning 1 in 5 Americans now live in areas covered by his criminal justice reformers. And to defend himself recently, he did a Wall Street Journal opinion piece, Why I Support Reform Prosecutors. So regardless of what the media tries to say, calling everybody anti-Semitic for talking about George Soros, most people are not talking about George Soros because he's Jewish. Most people are talking about him because he chose to be one of the largest, if not the largest, world private funder of independent groups working for what he considers justice, etc., but many consider a far left-wing agenda that actually makes everything worse. Despite the fact that he chooses to spend billions on political and social causes, this doesn't stop blue checkmark Twitter users from calling you an anti-Semite if you have a negative opinion of Soros. Marco Rubio tweeted a video, "The Democrats just blocked my effort to try and force Soros-backed prosecutors to put dangerous criminals in jail." And here's some of the responses. Jerry Nadler, quote-unquote, Soros-back equals conspiracy of Jewish money equals anti-Semitic trope. So Jerry's trying to sweep this under the rug and say, oh, Soros-backed prosecutors? Oh, you mean conspiracy of Jewish money? Oh, that's anti-Semitism. That's hate speech, says Jerry Nadler. Joyce Aline said, Soros-backed prosecutors? Sometimes the dog whistle is just outright anti-Semitism. Max Boot said, every time Republicans say Soros, you should hear the Jews. Unfortunately, this repugnant rhetoric thrills the GOP base, as I note in Post Opinions today. Randy Weingarten says, this is how anti-Semitism takes root and spreads. What is a Soros-backed prosecutor? Soros is a Hungarian Jew who survived the Holocaust. Orban, the authoritarian leader of Hungary, demonizes Soros all the time in Orban's culture war to suppress freedom and democracy. So if you're picking up what they're throwing down, George Soros is allowed to spend billions upon billions of dollars to fund left-wing causes, and if you politically or socially disagree with him, or even reference the fact that he's doing it in the first place, you are an anti-Semite. That's anti-Semitism. You just hate him because of his ethnicity. You hate everybody, is what they'll lie to the masses and lie to themselves by saying. He's allowed to fund things in different countries to push certain agendas, but you can't possibly disagree or speak about it. Now, I'm going to do a lot in this live stream, but possibly the most important thing I'm going to tell you is the truth. People like this are actually increasing anti-Semitism. As somebody that doesn't want hate of any groups, how in the world is it going to help when you have a bunch of fraudulent liars covering up real criticism of a person who spends a lot of money to alter reality, sweeping that under the rug as hate speech, and even throwing Jews under the bus by suggesting that talking about him is hatred of everybody. These morons who lack self-awareness, these liars who lack self-accountability, are, in my perspective, hurting Jews more than anybody and shamelessly throwing everybody under the bus instead of addressing the issues that everybody cares about with George Soros' money. And a lot of right-wingers will be upset at all these people calling everybody anti-Semites and saying, oh, this is just a left-wing thing. It's only the left who does this. I'm going to prove in this live stream that it's not true because right-wingers, the Republican Party, and people like Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump who vow to fight the rhinos and stand up for the Constitution are constantly passing speech laws that in some cases either criminalize speech or enforce hate speech rules through U.S. government practices, which in my opinion is completely unconstitutional. That's right. Ron DeSantis flew to Israel and passed the first Florida bill ever signed on foreign soil to add hate speech rules to how Florida enforces certain things in schools and college campuses. The State Department has a list of anti-Semitic, basically hate speech, in which they brag anti-Semitic acts are criminal when they are so defined by law. Both parties are in on this. It is not specifically a left-wing thing, and many of the same right-wingers who will get called anti-Semites for criticizing George Soros are the same right-wingers who are passing speech laws which essentially call themselves anti-Semites for what they do say. They have have passed these broad, delusional, completely exaggerated rules that will and are being used against them. So it's hard to feel bad for these people when, in my perspective, they're selling out the American Constitution for a foreign country and a donor class in which, just like in the case of them calling Republicans anti-Semites for criticizing George Soros, basically paving the way to make it impossible to talk about it. Now, before my live stream starts, I just wanted to go over two headlines. This is ABC News from December 6, 2020. It says Great Barrier Reef has deteriorated to critical level due to climate change. A conversion report said 18 sites worldwide have a critical outlook status. That fear-mongering was backed up a little bit because the Great Barrier Reef in 2022 has the most coral it's had in decades and the highest levels ever recorded since monitoring began nearly 4 decades ago. But there's still fear-mongering about climate change. However, isn't that interesting that just 2 years ago it was a critical level and now it's the highest level ever? And today we are sending $4.5 billion to Ukraine for their budget needs and $1 billion for additional security assistance to Ukraine militarily from our Department of Defense. And do you remember the CBS video where they admitted we didn't know where a lot of the arms were going in Ukraine? Well, CBS backtracked those claims. They said, we removed a tweet promoting our recent doc Arming Ukraine, which quoted the founder of a nonprofit Blue Yellow, Jonah Ullman's assessment in April that only around 30% of the aid was reaching the front lines of Ukraine. Since that time, Ullman says delivery has improved. Additionally, U.S. military has confirmed that defense attaché Brigadier General Eric M. Harmon arrived in Kyiv in August for arms control and monitoring. So essentially, because of the backlash and probably pretty accurate reporting, the U.S. military sent somebody to Ukraine to check up on it, and CBS retracted their claims. Wow. Of course, CBS does some of their only real reporting in decades, and they quickly retract because I guess the U.S. government is on it now. What a joke. This is going to be a very information-packed live stream. Thank you so much for joining. God bless you, and we'll start now.
It's the Dream Rare Podcast. Welcome to the show. The way to get the news at the desk or on the road. Let's go. God is great and success in our control. The world is crazy, but we get better from obstacles. It's the Dream Rare Podcast. Welcome to the show. The way to get the news at the desk or on the road. Let's go. God is great and success in our control. The world is crazy, but we get better from obstacles. Yeah.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Dream Rare Podcast Live. This one took me hours upon research, putting it together and everything. I produced that whole intro. I hope you appreciate it. Thumbs up. And before we start the George Soros anti-Semitism debate, I want to say yesterday's live stream, I played a clip from CBS's documentary, Arming Ukraine, and they've already retracted their claims from that video. I guess probably the U.S. government got mad and they sent an arms person to go check in Ukraine, and they're backtracking. It's like CBS does one real thing of reporting against Ukraine and they have to retract the story. What a freaking joke. As we're sending, I think, $5.5 billion to Ukraine, $4.5 billion for, like, you know, their economic safety or whatever, and then $1 billion in weapons. What a joke. But anyway, I want to talk about this, and I want to say my mission here, right? Because I want to be completely transparent and honest. I'm not a hateful person. I don't have to justify myself. I'm just being honest. I like to do that with my live streams. I want to tell the truth because I think the truth stops hate, the truth stops violence, and I think people have the wrong idea and they assume that speech regulation will equal peace. Like, oh, the only way to stop people from hurting Jewish people is to pass speech laws in America and call everybody anti-Semitic for criticizing George Soros. Not only is that stupid, but it actually, in my opinion, increases the hate. I don't think you can legislate hate out of somebody's heart via speech laws. And I do believe the only way the American experiment works is if we all have the First Amendment to question and be honest, openly honest about race, religion, etc. This country is not going to work if everybody just calls everything racist, sexist, xenophobic, anti-Semitic and sweeps it under the rug. It's not only going to cause more backlash, more hate, and probably more violence. Like they say, anti-Semitism is at such high levels. I mean, that sucks, but you know, do you take any accountability? Like, the ADL is constantly just being terrible, but then they're blaming everybody else. It's like, I'm not saying there aren't bad people out there, but maybe it's time for some of these groups to self-reflect and look within, because what they're actually doing is throwing their own ethnic group under the bus by saying you're not allowed to criticize people like George Soros and saying it's anti-Semitic to do so. So when it comes to politics in America, I'm really going to crack this whole shell open, folks. God bless you guys. Thank you for supporting, because this is a topic most people will not touch in the left wing. It's like, political career, ending. And on the right wing, it's not going to make you a lot of friends on the right wing, because just like the left wing, there's an agenda there. But when it comes to left-wing politics, it's not a conspiracy theory, it's not anti-Semitism, it's not hate speech, to recognize that George Soros is one of the biggest political donors. He brags about it on Open Society Foundation, saying they're one of the largest, if not the largest, private, world. They're doing justice, blah, blah, blah. But that's their perspective. They think they're doing all these great things. I don't think they are. But they can think, I don't mind that they think that they're doing that, but here's where I have the problem. They want to act as if any sort of disagreement with that means that you hate all Jewish people because you disagree with George Soros. It's so stupid, it's so fake, and it's really just a terrible strategy to quash hate, because it's like taking your entire ethnic group, throwing them out and being like, oh, if you hate me, then you hate everybody. And it's like, no, but that's not going to do what you think it's going to do. On the right wing, of course, George Soros is a massive donor to left-wing politics. The right wing, rest in peace, Sheldon Adelson. He's passed, but he's also Jewish. He was the biggest right-wing donor for a long time, and he would give hundreds of millions of dollars to the Republican Party. Here's where it gets interesting, folks. Now that I've kind of laid out a broad brush to say I'm not a hateful person, I don't hate anybody, but I'm also not a dummy, and I'm not a liar, and I'm not scared to tell the truth. So I'm just going to keep it real with you. All of these laws, right? I'm not against Israel or against Jewish people, but I am against hate speech laws, because a lot of these laws are fake, fraudulent, and they're trying to cover up, in some cases, reality or criticism of billionaires like George Soros, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Zucker of CNN, anybody who happens to be Jewish and powerful. This is what a lot of these laws do. And on the right wing, people like Ben Shapiro and even people like Mike Pompeo, they, I think they do some good things, but they'll constantly tell everybody that they're anti-Semitic. If, you suggest someone has dual loyalty, if anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, that's like me saying anti-vaccination is anti-science. It's like, what does that even mean? If you don't get the COVID vaccine, does that mean you're an anti-vaxxer? Of course not. But if you, question the fact that we're giving billions of dollars to Israel every year, then you might be anti-Zionist and you're an anti-Semite. These are the games that even the right wing plays. They just use these word salad and throw it out there and act like anybody who just disagrees or questions must just hate everybody and hate Israel. They lie just like the left wing. But in general, one of the things that it seems like the left wing and the right wing agrees on is one of the anti-Semitic speech laws that is being passed through legislation through left wing, right wing executive order, and it's on the State Department website. One of those laws says that it is basically anti-Semitism to suggest that any Jewish person in America has more loyalty to Israel. It's called dual loyalty, and they say that this is like this terrible anti-Semitic hate speech offense. Don't say that anybody has more loyalty to Israel or the equal amount of loyalty to Israel in America. The craziest part is, I don't have the clip here, but if you're curious enough, you can find it yourself. The biggest donor before he passed away to the Republican Party was Sheldon Adelson. Donald Trump gave Sheldon Adelson's wife, Miriam, a Presidential Medal of Freedom, and this guy spends a lot of money on Republican candidates and has for a long time. There's actually a video of Sheldon Adelson basically saying he regrets serving in the U.S. military and he hopes that his kids serve in the Israeli military. So if I were to say, hey, that massive donor to the Republican Party is on camera saying basically like, I'd rather my family serve Israel than America, but if I were to say that he said that, I would essentially be violating a hate speech law that's being passed into legislation from Donald Trump via executive order, Ron DeSantis in Florida. I'm going to read that and prove it later. And also left-wingers. It's something that they both agree on. And here's something that I find fascinating, folks. There's no hate in my heart. You could tell I got love for people. Honest people of every ethnicity will hear what I'm saying and know it's real. There's a group in American politics called AIPAC. AIPAC stands for the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, and according to Google, it's a lobbying group that advocates pro-Israel policies to the legislative and executive branches of the United States. So there's this massive Israeli-American political action group, I guess public affairs committee technically, and they lobby both sides of politics. If I tell you that they're doing it, if I just say, hey, just like the way I say big pharma, I don't hate big pharma. I mean, I don't hate every product. There's certain products they make that I like, but I don't hate every pill and vaccine in the world, I guess. But if I point out the fact that they're paying off both sides, does that make me anti-pharmetic? Oh, you're an anti-pharmite. Like, what does that mean? Oh, no, that's just how it works. I mean, this is the crazy part. It's not even like they allow you to agree or disagree with policy. They don't even want you to say that it's happening. They don't even want me to tell you that big pharma is lobbying both sides of politics. And perhaps one of the other most influential groups in Washington is AIPAC, and they are swallowing up all politicians. And if you don't believe me, and if you think that's hateful, here's a video from AIPAC themselves bragging about pretty much swallowing up every politician that you've ever seen, and they're super thrilled about it. And I guess you're just supposed to not notice this or not talk about it? I don't know. Here's the video.
Please welcome Senate Democratic leader,
the Senate Republican leader.
Please welcome Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives.
Please welcome Secretary of State.
I'm honored to introduce the Vice President of the United States.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
Please welcome back to the AIPAC stage the Prime Minister of Israel.
From day one, Israel found itself in a unique alliance.
The alliance between Israel and the United States of America.
In the United States, our support for Israel is bipartisan, and that is how it should stay.
Our strategic ally, our unbreakable friendship.
America is safer when we stand with Israel.
Because if you care about American security, you must care about Israel's security.
My friends,
America and Israel
need you more today than ever before.
May God bless Israel.
And may God bless the United States of America.
Thank you.
It's so wildly brazen that it almost seems like it's a hit piece, like somebody made it to expose them, but they actually posted it on their own YouTube channel bragging about how they essentially lobby every politician that you've ever seen in your life, left wing or right wing. There's actually a video of Nancy Pelosi at some sort of like meeting or some sort of public conference. I don't know what it was or what group it was, some sort of Jewish group. She said, if our capital crumbled today in America, we'd still be giving aid. Well, I don't even want to call it aid, our support to Israel. So she's literally standing there being like, if our country burned to the ground, I would still just be funneling money to your country. And everyone's like applauding. And it's like, that doesn't make you a hateful person to wonder why all this is happening, right? I'm just going to keep painting the picture. If George Soros writes op-eds about why he supports left-wing prosecutors. That's a fact. He does support them. That's a fact. But if you say that he's doing that, you will have the entire left-wing establishment come down on you, including Jerry Nadler, Max Boot, who pretends to be a conservative. They'll all call you an anti-Semite. So talking about what George Soros is literally doing is anti-Semitic. Even though you're not talking about every Jewish person, you're just saying literally George Soros. He's not everybody, he's himself. I know dozens of Jewish people that don't like George Soros. But if you talk about George Soros, you're an anti-Semite. Sheldon Adelson's on camera saying that he wishes that he would have served the Israeli military over the American one, and he is by far one of the biggest donors in recent Republican history. But that's anti-Semitic to see that he said that. It's also anti-Semitic according to speech laws being passed by both parties to say that there's certain people that have more loyalty to Israel than America. And then there's the AIPAC. There's a political committee that is basically assigned to, lobbying on behalf of a foreign country. But you're not allowed to even talk about it, even though they brag about it. It's getting a little weird, right? Well, it's going to get a little weirder because these rules that we have in America that we're not supposed to talk about it or criticize or question or point out the facts are not exclusive to Israel. They actually run their nation like a country that actually likes the people who live there, and they have multiple rules against being unloyal. Here's a recent article from Forward. It says, Israel's Supreme Court of Israel rules that a breach of loyalty can lead to loss of citizenship. The decision upholds a 2008 law Those who are affected become stateless will be granted permanent residency. So in their country, I was reading the article, I guess it was for Palestinians who committed a crime of some sort, like a violent crime, they kick them out of the country. I don't think that's such a bad idea. It's like if you're so unloyal to Israel that you're going to like violently attack somebody, they give you the boot. We don't do that in America. That's very rare. But here's the most interesting one, because in America, this is not hate speech. This is just factual statements. There are dozens, if not more, of American politicians that have dual citizenship, which means they have citizenship to multiple countries. Many of them have a dual citizenship to Israel. It's not hate speech. It's not anti-Semitism. It's a factual statement. But here's the thing when it comes to Israel. This is a 2015 article. They do not allow that in their government. 5 new Knesset members renounced foreign citizenship. Kulanu's Rachel Azaria says relinquishing U.S. passport was a bit emotional. Others no longer Russian, Argentinian, and British. I'm going to read part of this article. So in America, if you notice one of your favorite senators who doesn't seem like they have much loyalty to the country has dual citizenship, it is a hate speech violation being passed through Congress, being passed through the White House, being passed through DeSantis, being passed through the left wing, bipartisan support. To act as if it's a hateful thing to suggest that someone might not have loyalty. If we're such a tight-knit country, America and Israel, why would you have to renounce your American citizenship in order to serve in the Knesset in Israel? Do you know why? I'm going to compliment Israel. They're not stupid like America. They're not completely compromised like American politicians, and they understand that although we are allies, America and Israel, you can't serve two masters, so they don't want to allow an Israeli politician to have an American citizenship where there's the possibility of not only dual loyalty, but there's the possibility of more loyalty to America. So they chop off your American citizenship, so you have to serve Israel. That's not the case in America. There are dozens, if not hundreds, of lawmakers with dual citizenry, and not only is that allowed in America, but you're actually not allowed to talk about it. You will be called an anti-Semite by Republicans, all these losers that speak at CPAC. You will be called an anti-Semite by people like Jerry Nadler or whatever his name is. Both wings of the bird will turn on you when you start noticing this stuff, and they'll be like, whoa, what do you love Palestine? And it's like, did you hear any of that? I've literally only complimented Israel. I said that their strategy on keeping their citizens loyal is smarter than America's. Like, people can't handle it. It's like when they hate Trump and you just compliment one thing he did, and they're like, oh, what do you support, fascism? Do you want to blow up the whole world? It's like, oh, you want Kim Jong-un, you a dictator? It's like, it's the same thing. You have derangement syndrome among both parties because both sides have been really brainwashed into, essentially just not realizing how the world works and allowing their country to fall apart. So let's read that article. Once again, in Israel, if you want to serve in their government, you need to relinquish your American passport. If you are an Israeli-American citizen in America, you don't have to relinquish your passport, but I have to relinquish my right of speaking about it. That's how America works, the exact opposite. Approximately 1/3 of the Knesset members who will be sworn in at a special ceremony on Tuesday, this is in 2015, are newcomers to the Israeli parliament. Among them are 5 who, before pledging to serve the Israeli people, had to formally renounce foreign citizenships. The requirement to give up non-Israeli citizenship did not take Rachel Azaria, Ksenia Svetlana, Chaim Jelen, and Abdullah Abu Maraf, and Yov Kish by surprise. While Israelis may hold dual citizenship, a basic law passed in 1958 states that Knesset members cannot pledge allegiance as parliaments unless their foreign citizenship has been revoked under the laws of that country. Once again, I think this is a great rule. I wish America had that rule. But if I say I wish America had that rule, that means hundreds of American lawmakers would have to renounce their dual citizenship. But instead of doing that, they'd rather just call everybody an anti-Semite. So it's anti-Semitic to want America to have the same laws that Israel has? Of course it's not. Just like all these people crying anti-Semitic, how many of them were there to help the Israeli citizens when they were being force vaccinated and they couldn't go into, stores and stuff? All of a sudden, all these people that love Jews just have nothing to say while Jews are being persecuted and basically under medical tyranny prison rule. Yeah, then nobody has anything to say. It's all fake. It's like when left-wingers say, oh, I love black people. It's like, I'm sure you do, but just saying it on Twitter doesn't, I'm so not racist. Like, sure you are, Jessica. Like, good tweet, like it's the same sort of vibe. All right, I'm just going to read this real quick. Azaria, a 38-year-old Jerusalem deputy mayor, renounced her American citizenship, which she had held by virtue of her mother having been born in the U.S. So an American Israeli serving in the Israeli Knesset has to get rid of her American passport. We're such great allies here. We just have to funnel billions of dollars to Israel every year. They're the original Ukraine. They just suck up our money. But if you disagree with that foreign policy, you're an anti-Semite, and they just accuse you of wanting like Jews to die. They're like, oh, what do you want them to get bombed? We need the Iron Dome. It's like, okay, we need a wall. Does Israel fund our wall? I don't hate Israel, but it's like, are they broke? I doubt they're broke over there. They can't fund their own Iron Dome. The only way to fund the Iron Dome is to just suck up our taxpayer money every year like Zelensky. That's the only way to fund it. Like, it's such a joke, you can't disagree with it. Okay, then why doesn't Israel pay, why didn't they pay off my college loans? Because it's not their problem. But apparently we got to pay for everybody else in the world, or else we're just like raging Putin propagandists or something. That's the bullshit excuse that they use. So that's interesting. Now, this is a State Department website, folks. Sorry, my color ink is a little bit out. That's U.S. Department of State. State Department, they've defined anti-Semitism. And all of these laws that are being passed through in the left wing and the right wing, DeSantis has passed a school order. Trump passed it through executive order to basically pressure schools into pledging allegiance to Israel. If you don't pledge allegiance to Israel, you can't get certain government money. It's fascinating because in America, you don't even have to be loyal to America. You could hate this country, hate everybody here, hate the religions, hate the race. You could be the worst person in America and just viciously hate your own country, and you can get government money. But you need to pledge allegiance to the country that, that country, or else you can't get the money. But here's some of the rules. I'm just going to read them. I have them here. There's a lot of ones that I semi-agree with that are just like terrible. Like, the first one is like calling for, aiding, or justifying the killing or harming of Jews. It's like, yeah, I get that rule. Killing someone's not illegal. Calling for violence is evil. That's a rule I could get with, no doubt. But then some of them get a little weird. I mean, here's one of the rules. And keep in mind, these same set of rules that's on the State Department website, it's almost word for word the exact ones that Trump is passing through, that DeSantis is passing through. And this is why they call people who criticize George Soros anti-Semitic, even though a bunch of these right-wingers are not anti-Semitic. They love Jews and they love Israel. They get called anti-Semitic because it's actually the Republicans passing the speech laws that call them an anti-Semite, and then the left just goes off those rules and say, you're anti-Semitic. They're like, no, I'm not. And it's like, dummies, you're the same. You pass these through. I don't think you're an anti-Semite, but if you don't want to be called one, maybe you shouldn't be pushing hate speech legislation through the RNC, which they're doing. Here's one of the rules. Making mendacious, dehumanizing, demonizing, or stereotypical allegations such as Jews or collective power of them worldwide, such as especially but not exclusively the myth about a world Jewish conspiracy or of Jews controlling media, economy, government, or other societal institutions. So this is once again a hate speech law that's posted on the State Department website that has been passed through legislation by Democrats and Republicans, including Ron DeSantis, and it says stereotypical allegations such as especially but not exclusively. So one of the rules is you can't say that Jews control media, economy, government, or societal institutions. So when you then say, well, Bloomberg is, I don't like it. And then, they called Ted Cruz a couple of years ago, you're an anti-Semite. Of course, Cruz is not anti-Semitic. He loves Jews. But you did pass, you do support these speech laws, and they do say that if you are then to criticize one of the many Jews who own media, all it takes is a Wikipedia page, who owns Facebook, who owns CNN, it's like a lot of Jewish people have a lot of money and control. I'm not saying you need to talk about it, but in America, you should be allowed to. It's like, I don't know. I don't have speech laws for my ethnic group. It's like, I can't say every Polish person is loyal to America, and if you disagree, you're anti-Polish. Like, could you imagine if I said that? Everybody would look at me and be like, Anomaly, you're a liar. You're a sneaky liar. It's like, I'm also Italian. every Italian person has 100% loyalty to Italy, or else you're an anti-Italite, you know? And like, you would look at me and be like, Anomaly, you're a liar, you know? Like, you're covering for your people, you know? That's what it would seem like if I said that. I don't have any speech laws, because here's my thing. I don't think every Italian person in America has loyalty to America. I don't think every Polish person in America has loyalty to America. I don't think every black person in America has loyalty to America. I don't think every Christian in America has loyalty to America. And I don't think every Jew in America has loyalty to America. But that group has speech laws to protect you from saying it. Isn't that just not suspicious at all? Isn't that just so great? That's great for Israel, right? Of course it isn't. It doesn't help them. It only really turns people against them more as a group when you can't even criticize George Soros without being caught under hate speech legislation, you know? So let me read some of the other ones. It's such a joke. It says, accusing Jews as a people of being responsible for real or imagined wrongdoing committed by a single Jewish person or group, or even acts committed by non-Jews. So you're not allowed to accuse Jewish people of being responsible for real or imagined wrongdoing committed by a single Jewish person. But isn't that kind of what you're doing when they say it's anti-Semitic to criticize George Soros? I'm not calling it for everybody. I'm just saying that one person is doing something, and then you actually say it's everybody and call me an anti-Semite. Isn't that what the left wing does when they're trying to quash criticism? They actually, really kind of violate that law. And here's the thing. I don't do that personally. However, I don't have a law like that for myself. There's so many people in this country that will say white people did everything wrong and it's your fault and you're privileged and you need to give up that. There's no law that protects a Christian or a Caucasian in this country that says you're not allowed to accuse me of something that another white person's doing or another Christian's doing. And guess what? I don't want a law like that. I don't need a speech law to make me feel good at night. It's embarrassing in the United States of America. But what people need to understand is this is a bipartisan operation. Both sides are in on it, including your favorite Republicans, and no one is addressing it because this live stream, I'm going to be one of the only major conservative figures that is going to talk about this stuff. Everybody else sweeps it under the rug because it's just a big show. They go to CPAC, they wear a cowboy hat, they go on a plane, they wear a mask. You know what I'm saying? They get the donor money, they suck their lollipops, and then they just move on to the next event and try to act like it's not happening. So, to the people that are going to get upset, you're welcome for this excellent presentation. So here's the other speech laws on the State Department website. One of them says, accusing Jewish citizens of being more loyal to Israel or the alleged priorities of Jews worldwide than to interests of their own nation. So that's so not happening that they need to pass a speech law to stop you from talking about it. So you're not allowed to say that any Jewish American has more loyalty to Israel, despite the fact in Israel they don't allow you to have an American citizenship to serve in government, but in America you can have dual citizenship. Interesting, right? Here's Ben Shapiro, who agrees with the same thing. He is essentially just a copy-paste of that exact speech law that's being passed through legislation by Republicans. He said American Jews, whether ethnic or religious, are loyal to America, not Israel. Any dual loyalty supposition is anti-Semitism. So I think Ben Shapiro's a good American. However, isn't that a little sketchy? Just being like, anybody that's like me of my race or religion has loyalty, and if you question it, you're an anti-Semite. It's like, that's sneaky, Ben Shapiro. Very sneaky. I am Italian, Polish, Puerto Rican, Czechoslovakian, Christian. You call me what you... I don't need a law to say that everybody like me is loyal, because everyone like me is not loyal. So when you act like everyone like you is loyal when everyone knows they're not, it makes people think you're in on it. So you're actually making people hate you more. You're actually making people more suspicious. But here's the thing. People don't care. They have no self-awareness. They have no self-accountability. I'm just going to be 100% raw here. They love to play the victim card, the number one victim card in the world, where they need no self-awareness. They need no self-accountability. Thousands of years of history. They want no responsibility for anything ever, anytime, ever. And everybody else just has to just lose laws to talk about it. You can't say anything. So when Ben Shapiro says stuff like this, Soros spends a lot of money backing progressive prosecutors, saying it does not make you anti-Semitic. It makes you correct. He has no problem saying that, which is true. I appreciate that. But still, he plays into the circus as well by saying every single person of his ethnicity and his religion, whether ethnic or religious, is loyal to America, not Israel. That's not true at all, Ben. You're a liar, okay? I don't care. You're doing good work now. That's a lie. I'm not saying everybody, I'm not saying to walk around and just accuse people of not having loyalty, but if you're going to sit there and say that every single person of your ethnicity and religion has loyalty to America, when the country of Israel has totally different loyalty laws, which make more sense than ours, but we're not even allowed to talk about it without being accused of a hate speech violation, which is being passed through law, this is why Republicans get nothing done. This is why 3 great years of Trump ends up in a vaccine sales pitch where he cucks to Moderna, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, and he runs around with his sleaze bag, used car salesman smile, acting as if Big Pharma is the greatest thing ever and he just invented the greatest thing in the world. Donald Trump is a liar, but people love it. So it's like, I don't play the victim. I don't blame other groups or blame people. America's getting what they deserve. The left wing is completely and utterly brainwashed into like literal inverted reality. The Republicans like literally drool over the vaccine salesman who set them up in 2020, has not learned his lesson, and has continued to run around the country providing cover-up ops for Big Pharma because he's in on it. But that's what you want? You don't want me to talk about what's going on here because it hurts your feelings because your favorite people are in on it? Then what's the point? Why do you expect to be successful? Just wait for your next lockdown or, vaccine mandate, because it's coming, unless people wake up to the reality that even their best people on their political party are passing speech laws, funneling billions of dollars to Big Pharma, and in some cases, like Trump in 2020, doing socialism. So I could read more of these speech laws. I mean, here's another interesting one. Applying double standards by requiring of the behavior of Israel that's not expected or demanded by any other democratic nation. I don't have anything against Israel. I'm just saying it's a little weird that there's laws that protect a foreign country more than my country. I don't want a law to say that you have to, criticize America the same that you criticize Nigeria. But that's the law. They're saying you can criticize Israel, but only if you do it exactly equally, equality. It's like, say Saudi Arabia does something crazy. Maybe it's not equal. You know what I'm saying? Maybe there is a country in the world that's doing more crazy stuff. Am I supposed to critique Nicaragua as much as I critique China? Is this the game we're playing now? Oh, if I'm going to critique China, then I must critique Nicaragua exactly the same amount. These are literal anti-Semitic speech laws being passed through legislation, and the Republicans are in on it, and the Democrats. And it's like, okay, so I have to equally apply I guess I should just view the world in a communist ideology, which is what they want. We're all exactly the same and equal, except we'll own nothing. Like, yeah, that sounds fun. It's like, there's other crazy laws in there, but if you want to read the laws without taking too much of your time, just Google defining anti-Semitism State Department, and right on the U.S. government State Department website, you can read all of the hate speech laws for anti-Semitism that are being supported by people like Shapiro, in some cases, that are being passed through legislation by people like Trump and DeSantis. And then when they pass those in legislation and act as if those are rules that should be enforced, then they get called an anti-Semite and they cry victim, and Shapiro cries and says, oh, that's not anti-Semitism. It's like, yeah, you're right, Ben, it's not anti-Semitism, but neither is what you say is anti-Semitism. It's like, I don't need to use these words in order to quash criticism. Just say what you're talking about, because our party's passing these laws into legislation that basically says criticism of George Soros is anti-Semitism. Read the laws that DeSantis passed. It's very broad. We don't need speech laws in America. The First Amendment is good. Every race, religion, gender, ideology, political thing can defend their ideas. Defend your ethnic group, defend your ideas without calling everybody a racist, sexist, xenophobic, anti-Semite. You're a sexist if you want a man and a woman to be married. You're a racist if you notice crime or you just literally treat everybody equally and judge people by the content of their character. You're an anti-Semite if you criticize George Soros. You're an anti-Semite if you realize that there's donors donating to both parties, blah, blah, blah. It's all a joke. But this is why the right wing never wins, because it's like, Fox News says Dan Bongino says the Democrats are the real racists, and everyone like drools over it. They're like, you're racist. No, you're racist. No, you're racist. No, you're racist. You're an anti-Semite. No, you're an anti-Semite. Oh, we beat the Hamas and the Ilhan Omar. Oh, we beat the George Soros haters. It's all a big show. It's like a bunch of freaking babies. I'm 32 years old, and I'm one of the biggest adults in the room in politics. It's pathetic. It's why when I go in to political events, I have like 45-year-old 50-year-old people that are like, people that are big stars in politics. They look at me and they're like, man, I love your stuff. It's like, I appreciate it, but I'm not trying to be the adult in the room. It's like, grow up. You got a bunch of 50, 60, and 80-year-olds selling our country out and crying racism. Such a joke. Anyway, here's the bill that I'm talking about. And this is not the only time it's been passed, but this is the Ron DeSantis bill. Ron DeSantis bill takes aim at anti-Semitism. The proposal will add religion as a protected class when it comes to discrimination against students and employees, right? Sounds pretty harmless. He's going to fight anti-Semitism with legislation. Here's the weird part. In Florida's history, there's never been a Florida bill passed on foreign soil. Because usually when Americans have loyalty to America, they don't run around the world to do their own country's bidding. But Ron DeSantis made history in Florida by passing the first Florida bill ever passed on foreign soil. Can you guess where he was? I'll give you a hint. Israel. So he flew over to Israel to pass basically an Israeli loyalty bill that adds religion as a protected class. Here's the interesting part. He's adding religious protections, right? That's exciting. I'm a Christian. Maybe I'll get some religious protections, right? Oh no, this isn't for me. Oh shoot. It's a religious bill that provides religious discrimination, except it provides it to a majority of an ethnic group that isn't even religious. So it's not a religious bill. It's an Israeli/Jewish bill. That's just what it is. I'm not grouping the two together. This bill groups the two together because it's like a pseudo religion bill that protects the majority of people who don't even believe in God and aren't religious, but also protects a foreign nation with specific rules. So it's not at all a religion bill. It's Ron DeSantis passing his little Israeli loyalty bill. That's what they all do. And then they cry when they get called anti-Semites. I don't feel bad for them. Ron DeSantis obviously isn't an anti-Semite, but he's passing through legislation that makes it seem like he is. Here's that exact thing that I showed you on the State Department website in Tampa Times. This legislation lays out exactly what would be considered anti-Semitism, including making mendacious, dehumanizing, demonizing, or stereotypical allegation about the power of Jews as a collective, such as a worldwide conspiracy of them controlling the media, economy, government, or other societal institutions. So do you get what I'm saying? When you say that George Soros is funding prosecutors, it's a fact. He literally, his Open Society Foundation and other groups are funding left-wing prosecutors. It's not hate speech, it's a fact. But here's the thing. That fact can now be considered hate speech when you pass laws that say, well, technically, if you make dehumanizing or mendacious claims that Jews own, media groups, then it's like they're passing through their own demise. Also here, I don't know if you could see in the Ron DeSantis bill, the same thing. The measure will also be ban certain speech on campuses about the state of Israel, applying a double standard to Israel by requiring the behavior of them that's not expected or demanded by any other democratic nation. So on a college campus, there are now Israeli loyalty bills. You have to give the exact same criticism of Israel as another country, or else you could be banned from a college campus. And Donald Trump, via executive order, passed these same exact rules and laws. It's very interesting. But America, in this country, you can literally hate America more than any other democratic nation. You could lie about our country. You could say that we're responsible for climate change and we're destroying the environment. You could ignore Africa and India and China and all of what they're doing. You can do that in America. That's totally fine, totally legal. There's no laws on your thing. But there are now dozens of laws to protect a foreign nation. Here's the point I'm trying to get to people. I don't hate Israel. I have no ethnic hate in my heart for anybody, but facts are facts. And after enough research, I've done thousands of hours of research over the last 5 years, I've come to the conclusion that America is a colony of Israel. Look up what a colony means on Google if you want to know. We're a colony of Israel. We're like a conquered country that literally is existing to serve them in both parties. Give them our money, but don't question it. Pass laws that don't allow people to criticize them. Meanwhile, people are allowed to criticize our own country 50 times as hard. You get what I'm saying? Our country almost at this point exists just to serve them. And if we ever stop doing that, or if we think about it, then all of a sudden your whole political world comes crashing down on you, because they have now successfully passed through hypocritical legislation through governments in both parties that they're lobbying, that they don't even want you to talk about them lobbying it. And it's like such an absolute joke. I'm not a hateful or a nasty person, but it's happening. It's reality. And I'm going to talk about it as long as I have my First Amendment. And it's funny because the left wing is like unhinged. On one hand, they call everybody anti-Semitic all the time. On another hand, they don't even really like Jews in Israel that much. It's the same with like BLM. Left wingers always claim to love black people, but when you look at their policies, you're like, do you hate these people? I mean, I don't know where it is, but I have a cover. I'll just show you real quick. Give me 1 second. Hold on 1 second. This is like spontaneous, but this is a Billboard cover. I subscribed to Billboard because I hit number 2 on the charts with Bryce and Gray, so I wanted to see my own name in here. Look at this. It says do something, and then it says music leaders on how to take action for reproductive rights now, and it has a black hand. So this is like the left wing. They're like, reproductive rights means right to abort your black kid. That's what they're telling people. Like, if you're black, you need to really care about abortions. It's like, reproductive rights mean you have the right to reproduce. I mean, the whole word is like word magic. You have the right to basically just slash your own baby out of a womb. Like, that's the big left-wing message for black America. Is like, you know, you have the right to abortion, but they're your best friend. It's always so different. But in general, when it comes to the left wing, they say, you know, oh my God, any criticism of any left-wing Jew is anti-Semitism, but we're going to just, you know, hate Stephen Miller and every right-wing Jew. So, of course, the left wing's lying. Of course, they're hypocritical. Of course, they're not a huge fan of Israel because they view Israel as just white people and, you know, pilgrims, pillagers, whatever. But when you get to the right wing, it's like this, you know, they act like they love Jews so much too, and they pass all these speech laws, and it's like that doesn't mean you like them. Just, you know, being subservient to a foreign nation, like that doesn't prove that you're like less hateful than me because you're passing a law not allowing me to, you know, critique what's going on. And I find it funny because when I talk about this stuff, you know, the right wing always says, we're against safe spaces on college campuses. No, you're not, Ben Shapiro. And this is why I get like kicked out of some podcasts sometimes, because when they're acting like, oh, we're such rebels, we're against hate speech on college campus, has any of them spoken out about the bill and executive order that Ron DeSantis and Trump passed? They're two separate ones, Trump executive order, DeSantis bill. They both essentially made it harder / illegal / cutting your funding if you criticize Israel on a college campus that they deem too much. So if you're against hate speech on a college campus, you can't be pro hate speech laws for Israel. But that's the thing with the right wing. They're all hypocrites. They support that legislation. And then when I call it out, they try to act like I'm a hateful person. They're like, oh, what do you want, Israel to die? And it's like, no. It's the same with the foreign funding. Google how much money we've given to Israel over the last 30, 40 years. They're just sucking money out of America. I don't know, tens of billions of dollars every year. They just suck. You know, but you can't mention that they're getting money or whatever. It's like, okay, it's happening. I'm not, you know, but then if you literally are like, you know, I think Thomas Massey was saying that we already gave $3 billion. They're trying to give $4 billion. And Thomas Massey was the only Republican who voted against it. And he explained himself. He's like, we already gave a couple billion, and I don't even know where these funds are going. And you know, it's not the time right now. And they're literally accusing Thomas Massey of trying to kill Jews. Like, they're like, oh, what do you want the Iron Dome to kill? It's like, the Iron Dome works fine. Israel has money. Oh, does Israel only exist if they suck money out of America? They don't have their own money. They don't have their own economy. Of course they do. People aren't going to die because we didn't give them $1 billion extra on top of the couple billion we already gave them. But this is how they treat us in America. If you know, and on the right wing, not just the left wing, it's like, if you don't just bow down, give up your First Amendment for a foreign country and funnel your money there as much as they want, like Zelensky. You know, what's the, oh, Zelensky, yeah, don't notice that. But in general, it's like, you know, the same thing. He's just just eat our money, tens of billions of dollars, but you hate, you know, Ukraine if you don't give them money. It's like, no, that's not true. It's just like, where's it going? How come it doesn't go the other way around? You know, at what point can we stop just giving everyone money all the time? Or is that just what we do here? I don't know. But the point I'm getting is, if I say that to the right wing, they will then suggest I'm anti-Semitic. They spiral like a left-winger. If you question the border wall, left-wingers, like, their brain, like, melts in their hand, and they're like, oh, racism. I'm like, I'm literally part Hispanic. You're, like, it doesn't matter what ethnicity you are. You should be allowed to think for yourself. But it's like they spiral and they can't handle it, and they just scream racism. Right wing is the same way. If you question their programming when it comes to how their country is being absolutely sold out, they're like, oh, you hate everybody. It's like, no, I just don't believe in speech laws. I believe in the First Amendment. I think foreign aid is a joke at this point, and we need to lower it. And the funny thing is, if you start to, like, notice patterns, like, for instance, I'm just going to be really raw here. It's like, if you live in a certain area of the country and you watch the news all the time, and like 99 out of 100 violent crimes are a certain ethnic group, it doesn't make you a racist to notice that. I'm not saying you have to blame other people. It's not like you blame your neighbor, or like, some people blame white people for everything because some white people did something. I'm not saying to blame stuff, but I'm just saying everybody notices patterns. It's just, like, obvious, but we got to just act like we don't notice patterns, Doesn't mean you got to blame every person for it, but a pattern is a pattern, and it's worth considering, whatever. When it comes to the right wing, like, if they noticed Muslims doing certain things, they would, be like, Muslim Brotherhood is in all, it's like, I don't care about that. I'm not asking people to stop questioning Islamic groups from the Middle East, that are potentially infiltrating America, and, like, in a bad way. I'm fine with that. I don't call you an Islamophobe if you say that. But if I were to notice how many Jewish people are doing stuff, and it's like, oh, you hate everybody. It's like, nah, it's a very small percentage of the population doing a very large percentage of the stuff. And you can pretend like you don't notice, but it's happening either way. Every time I see something, I'm just, like, curious, and I, like, I always do background research, and it's like 9 times out of 10, it just so happens to be that way. It doesn't make me a hateful person, because I know that, every individual should be judged as a soul, and I don't want to bear all the issues of people of my color that did stuff. Like, I'm not punching myself in the face over, like, things that white people did 200 years ago or yesterday. I'm not taking the blame for that, and other Jewish people don't need to take the blame for what other Jewish people are doing, and other black people don't need to take the blame for what other black people are doing. Like, I don't believe the world should work that way, but I think the world would be a nicer place if everybody were allowed to talk openly about patterns and, just notice things and joke about it. It's like when they censor jokes, like, oh, we're going to make the world better by censoring Dave Chappelle's jokes. Like, it doesn't make people feel better. It doesn't ease racial tensions, Every time they act like they're going to ease racial tensions, they always make it worse. Speaking of which, I want to do another deep dive on Black Lives Matter, because I find this fascinating about BLM. Similar to the Anti-Defamation League, which is a Jewish organization which claims to fight anti-Semitism, I'm just going to go out on the record and tell the Anti-Defamation League, ADL, God bless you guys, I don't want Jewish people to be hurt. I don't want them to be discriminated against, and I want Jewish people to live in this world in peace and harmony and have the opportunities that everyone else has. But I believe that the Anti-Defamation League is terrible. I think that they're the BLM of Jewish groups. Like, I think they front and act like they're, we're so Jewish and we love everybody. But they're really like a far left-wing political organization that makes everything worse. Hey, if you're a Jewish person in America, like many people are that are watching me, to me, the least safe you could be is in a left-wing city. If you live in a high-crime area of a Democrat city, that's where Jewish people are unsafe. And they're not even always specifically being targeted just because of their ethnic group. They just live in crappy areas in New York City that they grew up in, and they're not as safe as they were 10 years ago. That's just a fact. So it's like, in general, the ADL, similar to like a George Soros, it's not because they're Jewish. I just don't like their politics and their worldview, and I think that they're self-sabotaging. And I think that that's like a common theme, is self-sabotage, and that happens when you have no self-awareness and no self-accountability. And when you're so interested in passing all these hate speech rules to make everybody look bad who questions you, you end up destroying yourself. I think these people are going to be responsible for destroying their own groups and ruining the future for all of us. It's not, I'm not trying to be hateful. I'm trying to be respectful and say, like, that's a huge problem in the world, is people lack self-awareness and self-accountability, and the ADL, just like BLM, have none for their own ethnic groups. So I think they are capitalizing on racial tensions and making everything worse. And the reason I talk about it is because I don't want things to be worse. I understand that there's good people out there of all kinds, and we all have to suffer when like a president passes a bill or a group does something stupid or a cop thing happens. You know, we all suffer. It's like everybody has to bear the blunt of what a few people do. So I'm just being honest. I think the ADL, if they really want to lower anti-Semitism, they would look within and try to figure out if they're really helping or they're really hurting. And I'm just going to say one more thing before I play this clip. This is where you get into the question where there's certain black activists out there where I'm not saying they're purposely making things worse, but I will say if your whole life is about being a victim and fighting racism, if racism disappeared and you got a lot of things, you know, your job kind of disappears and your identity disappears. So you have to ask yourself the question, are these people foolish or are they just race hustlers and race pimps, as people call them, where they're actually making things worse purposely because they could capitalize off of all the chaos? When the chaos goes, so does their career in many cases. So you got to ask yourself, you know, are these groups making a foolish mistake because they lack self-awareness and self-accountability and have, you know, very short-sighted politics? Or are they purposely hyping up tensions and issues so they can then exploit that, just like a lot of people in this world exploit the victim card because it can be wielded as a social weapon, for lack of a better word, and you know it could really be used to your advantage if used right. So you really wonder how many of these groups are dumb and how many of them are just capitalizing off of chaos. Speaking of which, here's a little bit about BLM founder, and I don't know if you guys remember when they called her a trained Marxist, or she called herself a trained Marxist. I just wanted to do a deep dive just to show you, you know, where they get a lot of their ideas from, their Marxist ideas. There's a guy named, I believe, Eric Mann, and I just wanted to do a little deep dive on that because most people never really cut below the surface on this story. So check it out. It's in a couple parts. You may recall when the BLM co-founder described herself as a trained Marxist. So who was she trained by? In her own words several times, and referenced here in the New York Post, Cullers 36 was the protege of Eric Mann, former agitator of the Weather Underground domestic terror organization, and spent years absorbing the Marxist-Leninist ideology that shaped her worldview. Here's an old clip of her comparing one of Eric's books to Mao, obviously Mao Zedong, the communist leader who killed millions upon tens of millions of people, comparing Eric Mann's book to Mao's Little Red Book.
Solutions. I was at the art publications table today, and I was speaking to this young person from Arizona who's trying to fight SB 1070, and he grabbed a book and he said it's like Mao's Red Book, and I was like, man, that's what I was thinking, and it was just really cool to hear him make that connection. I was like, how about you buy like 10 to 15 of these books, and you all have like a youth organizing group where you talk about it and you really try to engage this, and we can just we need to build off of this. And so that leads me to a point that I actually wanted to kind of focus on today, which is I think I have a really important role in speaking to youth. I have, maybe it's because I came in the movement at 17 and a half, so I have like just a knack for knowing how to organize young people into this organization and kind of teach them this politic, and then hear them now organize other people.
All right, so if you're following me, that's an older video of one of the co-founders of Black Lives Matter. She compares a little book to Mao Zedong's book. Mao Zedong killed tens of millions of people, horrible person, horrible leader, but she's bragging that the book that she's spreading on college campuses is similar to Mao's book. Whose book is she talking about? She's talking about her one of the guys who trained her. His name is Eric Mann, okay? There's a reason I'm bringing this stuff up. So she's comparing his book that they're trying to spread, like socialist, communist ideology, etc., on college campuses. So here's the part that I'm going to get to. Who is this guy and what made him be the way he is? I have the video footage. You're not going to see this anywhere else, folks. No other Republican or conservative page, not bragging, does the research like me, gets to the core of it like this. So I'm going to show you. And before I do, because I know they're going to accuse me of being hate monger or whatever, I'm not hateful. It's like if a Muslim person, and I think 99.9999% of Muslims are peaceful. If they weren't, we would notice. It's like most of the Muslim world is not killing each other all the time. It's in my opinion, lie. But in general, if a Muslim person blows somebody up and says Allah Akbar, I'm not going to blame every other Muslim person for that. However, just like they cover up in American media, they're trying to like, what's the motive? It's like, it's not to say that everybody is violent, but, you know, clearly that had some sort of role in what he did. So it's the same sort of thing that I'm saying here. I'm not blaming all Jewish people for what Eric Mann is and did, because they don't deserve the blame. However, you know, his Jewish roots is very influential in the reason that he is the way he is, and he says that here. And he's the one who essentially trained BLM and had them passing out books years ago that are apparently, according to her, very similar to Mao's book. So here's a very rare interview I found of Eric Mann, one of the people who apparently trained Patrisse Cullors to think how she thinks. And here's him explaining how he got to the place to think how he thinks. Very interesting.
How did you get started?
Well, I come out of a Jewish, socialist, somewhat anti-communist tradition. Not me, but that's what I come out of. Very strong anti-fascist. It's a joke, but I say that the fascist bastards were the first words that came out of my mouth, because that's all I kept hearing about fascists and Jews and genocide. And I'm very proud of my parents for not, at 5 years old, I was thinking about people starving in Europe. Yeah. I didn't know what Europe was. And there's a world made up of Goyim who attack us and put us in concentration camps, and we got to fight them. That was the main point. My mom said, stand up to those anti-Semites. Don't let them push us around. And there's a world made up of Goyim who attack us and put us in concentration camps, and we got to fight them. That was the main point. My mom said, stand up to those anti-Semites. Don't let them push us around.
So he's explaining there that apparently his mom told him that there's a world full of goyim. If you don't know what goyim is, it's a Jewish word that means non-Jew. That's what his mom taught him, apparently. There's a world full of not Jews, and you got to fight them and stand up to them because they're anti-Semitic. So this poor guy, I mean, that's just what he was taught as a kid. He can't help it. Imagine if any other ethnic group did that. Imagine if somebody said, I grew up German and my parents told me there's a world full of non-Germans and you got to fight them. Dude, do you think that would go over well? If somebody said, I'm I don't know, I'm Chinese and my parents taught me like there's a world full of non-Chinese people and I got to fight them. Like, he just casually says that. Like, I'm glad he admitted it on camera, but it's like no other ethnic group could get away with that. Certainly not my ethnic group. But he's like, yeah, that's what I was taught when I was young. There's a world full of other ethnic groups that aren't mine, and we just got to fight them because they're trying to fight you all the time. And it's like, that's how he views the world. Here's another clip, and for those who are just joining or who missed it, he is a large reason or a large influence behind the BLM people, so much so that there's a video of the BLM co-founder referencing his book and saying it's like Mao's little book. When they were doing a speech together at a school, I watched the whole thing, and they were passing out his little book. So he explains how, his Jewish mother taught him that all these non-Jews are trying to hurt you and you got to fight them. And then he talks about when he met black people and thought, wow, I need to work with them because their anger is like so much stronger than mine. You think I'm joking? I'll just play the clip.
So then when I met the black movement, I said, oh, I thought Jews were assertive. Wait till I saw this is the ultimate assertion, the ultimate anger. And what I didn't get before was a revolutionary theory of change. So when I joined the movement, it was all about, do you know about Africa? No. And then we're part of the Indians. What are the Indians? Oh yeah, and this country is wrong. This country is fundamentally wrong. It's built on the wrong foundations, built on genocide. So I didn't come up with the word. I said, wait, genocide, just like what happened. Oh, I remember genocide. That's what my parents taught me about. So quickly I got it. Jews, blacks, Native Americans, the world, people starving.
So this is this guy's worldview. He's like, I grew up, my mom told me there's a world full of non-Jews that are fighting you, you got to fight them. Then he met, I guess, black people for the first time, realized that they had way more assertion and anger than, his Jewish companions, I guess, and was like, oh man, we really got to link up and do some stuff. And, then he started putting things together and be like, oh, you went through that, I went through that. So, I mean, without him basically saying it, it seems like he's like, I'm coming together with all the minority groups of the world to, get basically like vengeance against who's he mad at? America, not like white people. They don't really make it clear, but that's his kind of like Marxist ideology and where it comes from. I just find it fascinating. And the reason I bring that stuff up is it's just interesting. It's like BLM. If you peel back the layers of BLM, does that make you a racist? When I was younger, I fell for the slogan. It's genius marketing. Black Lives Matter, right? Great marketing, because now you can say Black Lives Matter and everybody agrees with that. But then if somebody says all lives matter, it just seems like, racist. Like I fell for this when I was younger. Like, oh, no, Black Lives Matter. If you say all lives matter, it's racist. Now I'm like, these are just phrases. Saying Black Lives Matter is fine. Why wouldn't you? But then if you say all lives matter, that's bad. God forbid you said white lives matter or whatever. It's like, I get it now. It's just like, okay, this is what it is. But then you peel back the layer of like that phrase and that slogan, and you realize that this organization is not just racial, but it's extremely political. It has socialist, communist, Marxist roots. It's basically, this Jewish guy behind it that is, teaching these young black women about Marxism and stuff, and, telling them that we're the same because we've both been oppressed. And it's just interesting stuff. It doesn't make you a racist or an anti-Semite. It's just like peeling back the layers of what's going on. And it's not to blame everybody else, but that's really what's happening. So, the reason I included that in this video is because BLM is very similar, in my opinion, to a lot of these Jewish organizations where they put out this front that they're trying to heal racial tensions, exploiting it, making a fortune off of it, and in my opinion, making things worse. I think they've destroyed racial tensions. I think they encourage, rioting in some ways. And when the riots go out, they're not out there telling people to calm down. They're essentially out there, fueling the fire metaphorically, and so, in some cases with their rhetoric, and acting as if it's not happening. Sadly, it's only conservatives and right-wingers who are like, yeah, stop burning down the neighborhoods. But it's like, everybody in the media and left wings like, oh yeah, like it's like people are dying. How would burning down a city that's majority black help black people? Like that's the exact type of mindset of why it never gets better there. You know what I'm saying? Other ethnic groups and even like certain African families from Nigeria come over and crush it. And the reason that they crush it is not because they have a lot of money. The reason that they crush it is not because they have more opportunity. The reason that they crush it is they have a different mindset, the mindset of building and being grateful instead of destroying. So it's like, these left-wing organizations bring the mindset of destroy, you know what I'm saying? And they don't have like a real plan. And, you're called a racist if you notice it. So the same thing is with certain Jewish organizations and people like a George Soros or an Eric Mann. It's like, disagreeing with them doesn't mean you hate everybody, and wanting there to be a First Amendment that applies to everybody equally doesn't make you an anti-Semite. I don't dislike Jewish people. In fact, people can say what they want. I consider what I'm doing one of the most helpful things to the Jewish community worldwide, because lack of self-awareness and self-accountability leads to demise, and I don't want to see that happen. It's like telling, it's the South Side of Chicago, like just feeding them murder music and rap songs about pills and killing people, and then letting them play the victim and being like, oh yeah, like if you just hate cops, South Side of Chicago is going to be better in 10 years. No, it's not. The only way that those communities are going to be better is with a totally different mindset. So it's like the fraudulent left-winger, just like Malcolm X said, the liberal is the most deceitful person that I think Western Hemisphere. He said them like a snake, like a fox or whatever. It's the same thing. It's like you could feed someone the comfortable lie, just blame other people and keep making mistakes and listen to this really shitty culture and make that your culture. You know what I'm saying? That's what like things like Billboard do. They're like, this is your culture. It's like, yeah, that's awesome, and I appreciate it, but like, can't we be honest and be like, doing pills is not a good idea, like murder music is not a good influence for the children. Like a lot of these kids in Chicago, they grow up on this murder music. It's all they know. Their uncle's in a rap video. I like hip-hop. I'm just saying, like, it's easier for a suburban white kid to listen to hip-hop because it's not all he sees than it is for someone in the streets. That's all they know. They don't even know it. That's their reality, and it needs to change so people don't get shot all the time. But in general, it's like, the left-winger will tell them that that's all fine, blame others, and I'll come through and say, hey, we could do more, the police could do more, the government could do more, but at the same time, black leaders need to do more, hip-hop artists need to do more, and people themselves need to do more, families need to do more, fathers need to do more. Only right-wingers want to talk about the fathers in the household. You look at crime and you look at certain communities, and it's like, it is a lot of like broken families. I would say that's like one of the, if not the biggest issue. And that's not racist to tell people. That's a good thing. It's like, we don't think you can't do it. We know you can do it. We just know you're not going to do it if things stay the same. A little thing's got to change and you can do it, just like many have before. I provide the same thing to left-wingers, right-wingers, George Soros, you know, the Jewish community, whoever, the Zionist Republican Party, whatever people want to call whoever. It's like, I'm only providing peace, love, and facts. And you can act like it's so bad what I just said here, but really, you know, crimes and tragedies and all these things happen in the world when the boiling pot metaphorically bubbles too much and people freak out. And that's not to say it's okay to freak out, but it's like, you know, when things get really bad and the money starts to dry up, people get really desperate. Like the way to keep crime down in cities, prosperity, peace, you know, a good cop system, but really like morality, I believe families, religion. I think this keeps people more moral. That's my opinion. But it's like lying to everybody isn't a good thing. So this is my personal perspective. I think that, you know, in some hands, Jewish people do get a bad rap, and I understand why they're on the defense because of historical reasons. But also, just my personal honest analysis is I think a lot of Jewish groups and organizations and people, not all, but some, lack self-awareness and self-accountability, constantly play the victim, and feel as if they should have no consequences to their actions. And it's like, you know, covering up for George Soros, covering up for Sheldon Adelson, covering up for this, passing speech laws. Like, do you think that's going to make people less suspicious when Ben Shapiro says that it's anti-Semitic to question someone's loyalty? Do you think that, like, does he even care? Like, is that like cultural to Ben? Or like, you get what I'm saying? Like, I actually think he's doing great work, but if I sat here and told you because I'm Italian that you must think that every Italian has loyalty to America, I would expect you to not trust me. I'd be like, yeah, that's sketchy, you know. But it's like, nobody cares. The only thing that needs to happen to protect the Jewish world is everybody else needs to lose their freedom. Everybody else needs to lose their speech, First Amendment. Everybody else needs to give us money. And if you even question it or have any criticism of anybody of any kind, or you disagree with Israel's foreign policy or whatever, you know, one of 50 things, then you're the bad. Like, do people really think that that's going to make the world healthier and happier? I think that's a recipe for disaster. And I don't understand why people think it's going to work. And to wrap it up, I know that the Republican Party that passes these speech laws, I know that they don't give a crap about Jewish people, because when Israelis that I was talking to were, you know, 3 Pfizer shots deep, and if you didn't get the Pfizer shots, you couldn't go into certain restaurants and clubs, and, you know, it was like a very strict green pass over there. I was reporting on it constantly and getting messages from Israel. People were like, yo, thank you so much for covering this. Because when I cover things about Australia, it goes worldwide. Like, there's not a lot of good coverage in Australia and Israel. So if you do good coverage, it circulates. You know what I'm saying? America's really like the media capital of the world. We all talk about America. Not a lot of people talk about Canada, Australia, Israel. So when I started talking about it, I noticed that most Republicans that are willing to pass our speech laws are not willing to defend Israel. So I'm like, you know, are you the same way the left is with BLM and, you know, Hispanics? Like, you just talk about it and use them to pass legislation, but when push comes to shove for their freedom, their liberty, and their bodily autonomy, all of a sudden you're nowhere to be found. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like when the left-wingers say they love black people so much, but they ignore the murders of Chicago because there's no white person or cop to pin it on, and they just allow hundreds of people to get shot because it doesn't fit their narrative. Like, does that really mean you like these people? Because to me, that means that you care more about politics than you do human life. So I see the same thing in both parties, whether it be trying to quash criticism of George Soros, whether it be trying to quash criticism of, you know, I guess like Israel or whatever the right wing thinks they're doing. It's all like an act, you know, it's all a thing. And I know why it's a thing. People could say it's out of the kindness of their heart. It's called money. You know what I'm saying? George Soros spends a lot of money. Sheldon Adelson spends a lot of money. There's a lot of donors in politics. I'm not being rude. That's just literally how it works. And when people get paid to do certain things, they do certain things, you know? You know, Donald Trump's against vaccines, but he takes a bunch of money from vaccine people, and now he sells vaccines. I mean, I wish he wasn't that type of person, but all signs are pointing towards he is. You know, you're for the Constitution, but if you get enough money from a donor who wants you to pass a loyalty law to another country, maybe you'll do it. I mean, this is not hateful. It's just how politics work. I'm not anti-pharmatic. Big Pharma pays both parties. I'm not anti-Semitic, but AIPAC pays both parties and brag about it. So it's like, it's these speech laws, in my opinion, don't help our country, are destroying our Constitution, are setting Republicans up for failure because they will be called anti-Semites when they criticize people like George Soros. I think it's making America less safe and less good because we need to have tough racial discussions in this country, not just cover everything up and slap a BLM sticker on it. It's only making things worse because at the end of the day, the truth is the truth. Whether I say it, you cover it up, or I cover it up, the truth is the truth, and you can only cover it up for so long, so it doesn't actually help anything. And then to top it all off, when there are Jewish people struggling in this country or in another, a lot of time these same politicians that pass the speech laws don't feel like talking about it. How many Republican politicians, I'm not talking about news sources, politicians, how many Republican politicians that pass and support all these anti-Semitism speech laws, and they call Ilhan Omar an anti-Semite, and these left-wingers who called Ted Cruz an anti-Semite, how many of these people were standing firm with Israel and reporting on what was happening to them? You know, not a lot of people. I don't think they really give a crap. It's like Republicans are passing speech laws against our Constitution. Republicans are passing big pharma laws, funneling a bunch of money to like Moderna, buying Pfizer doses. Then those Pfizer doses that the Republicans helped bring to the table with a bunch of socialist money schemes, send it over to Israel, and Israel people are being injected or they can't enter stores, and all of a sudden these anti-Semitism haters in both parties don't have much to say. Guys, they're in on it. You know what I'm saying? I have zero respect for these Republicans that cry anti-Semitism, funnel money to big pharma, and then stay totally silent when the country of Israel needs your help the most. And you know, I don't want Israelis to be hurt, but I'm just like weirded out by the fact that unless our taxpayer money is like an open piggy bank where they can just suck it out at any time, that's it. It's like either they take $1 to $5 billion a year or they can't fund the Iron Dome. I have a hard time believing that. It's just that's what America is. America as a country, we're just like a joke. Like, you know, we're $20-40 billion to Ukraine. That's the only way Ukraine can survive if America's a piggy bank. What about Europe? You know, they don't got any other rich allies. You know, I heard Zelensky was trying to get Xi Jinping on the phone. It's like someone else can't fund them. We got to just fund them all the time, or else you're a racist, sexist, xenophobic, conspiracy theorist, anti-vaxxer, climate denying, anti-Semitic, you know, Putin propagandist. That's it. It's not true. So, you know, we heal the world through conversations. And I think, you know, when it comes to peace and racial unity, we're never going to get there if we just call everything racist and anti-Semitic. It's never going to happen. So I feel totally great about this live stream. I did hours worth of reporting. I showed you guys a lot of inconvenient facts. And, you know, I could sleep well at the end of the night because I know my intentions are good. I know my soul and heart's pure. And I don't think anybody that would criticize me or try to call me a name because of this, I don't think they're a better person than me. I mean, I think covering up speech and making speech laws only makes racial tension worse. And when you have people like Jerry Nadler, who is Jewish, say it's anti-Semitic and a trope to talk about Jewish money when George Soros is mentioned, it makes it seem like he's in on it. So he's actually doing the opposite of what he's claiming. I don't want you to think that everybody's in on it, but I'm going to pretend like I am because I won't even allow you to talk about it. I mean, it makes you look way more guilty. As somebody who knows that everybody's not in on it, you know, you're not doing yourself any favors when when right-wingers like Shapiro do the same thing and say, oh, if you question loyalty, you're anti-Semitic. You know, I don't think Ben Shapiro's in on it, but it's like you're making yourself look guilty. You're making it as if you're afraid of criticism or of anybody that's Jewish. Like, I'm not allowed to say anybody of your ethnicity has loyalty to another place. Now I know you're lying, Ben Shapiro. So now it kind of seems like you are guilty or you're sneaky, you know? So you could say that's hate speech, but that's just facts. That's just reality. And, you know, I want equality. Everybody talks about equality, but they don't want it. We want equality. You couldn't handle equality. You know, these people, oh, we want the same treatment. You definitely don't want the same treatment, because if you got the same treatment as me, you'd be crying 50 times a day instead of 5 times a day. If we had equal rights to talk about religion and ethnicity, and I could talk about you the way you could talk about me, you would not be happy. So a lot of the people that preach equality, they don't want equality. They want a leg up. They want special rules that they can enjoy, and they want special privileges from being shielded from scrutiny. And this same psychology is what is destroying the LGBT movement, by the way. It's like 10 years ago, people didn't really give a crap about LGBT. Even when it was like legalized, a lot of people weren't for it, but nobody really cared that much. Like, it wasn't culturally like that important. I would say, I'm guessing, there's more opposition to the LGBT now than there ever has been. Why? Did people just randomly grow more hateful of the LGBT naturally? No. The LGBT, not all of them, but the mainstream left-wing movement has been insane and evil and crazy and pushing further and further towards children. Do you get what I'm saying? Psychologically, you can apply the same thing to other ethnic groups as you do to LGBT as a sexual movement. They're their own worst enemy. If they would have just chilled out and got married and not been total weirdos with stuff and pumping pharmacy pills into little kids and trying to chop their dinglings off, people would have probably naturally just let them be a part of society, and, no one would have cared. But it was their own extremist behavior in the mainstream that has built an army, metaphorically, not a literal one, but metaphorically, of millions of moms and people who despise you. So the LGBT movement can cry victim, but they don't want equality. At first, we thought you wanted equality. Now we realize that you want Dave Chappelle to joke about white people and black people and straight people, but you don't want him to joke about gay people. So you actually don't want equality. You want supremacy. I call them LGBT supremacists. They want more rights than everybody else. We cannot be made fun of. We have a monopoly to be scrutinized, questioned, criticized, or made fun of in comedy. They're not equality LGBT people. They are LGBT supremacists. Take that same ideology I just told you about the gays, and everybody knows it. Take that to Jewish people. It's the same thing. I'm not saying that there aren't bad people out there who need to be questioned, but the own worst enemy of the Jewish community is the Jewish community. They want zero self-accountability and self-awareness for actions of people in the community and spiral and try to cover it up whenever it happens. Not everybody. I'm sure there's 100 Jewish people here watching agreeing with me, but it's the same sort of thing. Like, yeah, if you're gay, you can be very, scrutinize people who don't like you, but you have to watch your own actions or else people are going to hate you. And that goes to white people that are non-Jewish, and that goes to black people too. It's the same thing. I don't feel like I'm a massive victim in America. Do you hear me say, oh my God, my life's so bad because I'm white and the media hates me? I don't give a crap, I saw it coming when I was younger, and I just excelled. I don't, in basketball, people could say this or that, but I got to be good or else I can't play. With rap music, I don't get any special handouts. It's like, if I'm not good enough, news analysis, I don't care how many people are working against me. I see it as a challenge. It's like I'm jumping over hurdles all the time. I don't care. I like being underrated. So it's like, I don't play the victim as a white person in America. Yeah, a lot of America's turning against Christians and a lot of white, but that's our own fault. I don't say, oh, it's everybody else's fault that America is this way. It's everyone else's fault. It's not Christians' fault. It's not white people's fault. I don't say that. I actually say it is America's fault. People got too lazy, too complacent. They lost their religion. They lost their belief in God. They lost the family structure. We got overdosed with pharmacy pills, just like the black community got pumped with pills, in some cases possibly by the government, but that's a different story. The same thing has happened to white America and rural America. On the internet, farming and trad wives are super trendy, and it's true. It's great to own a farm. It's great to have a wife, but in reality, if you go to rural America, it's not all peace, love, and cows. I mean, there is some, but there's a lot of devastation. Like the white people getting just obliterated by pills, either in the cities or in the rural areas. Like, pharmacy pills are killing millions of people. So the point I'm getting to, all this devastating stuff is happening to our country. I don't play the victim myself. It's not like I'm a hypocrite and I feel so bad for myself. I don't feel bad for myself. I'm blessed. I'm grateful. The American experiment is crazy. They just took a bunch of groups and threw us here and scrambled us up with the media. It's some crazy shit. They really did a number on all of us. You know what I'm saying? No matter which ethnic group or religion you are, you kind of are living in the same world as I am. They did a lot of stuff to all of us, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of economic opportunity here, and I'm grateful to be an American, even with all the chaos. I don't play the victim. And if things are being taken away from me and there's people being racist to me, I still don't care. I still don't play the victim. I think if this is happening, which it is, my group or my whatever it is, my religion, whatever group I want to identify as, I think we have to do better. And I think if we did better in the last 30 years and weren't so comfortable, all of this stuff wouldn't happen. So I'm not someone who doesn't practice what I preach. I don't play the victim. I think when the LGBTs play the victim, they end up metaphorically shooting themselves in the foot harder than ever. And I see the same thing in the Black and Jewish community, where it's like 100% victim, 100% blame, 0% responsibility. And if I really dislike people, I could just ignore it and watch everything go to shit. But I'd rather just be honest and be like, no one on the left or the right will say this, but I think that's like the number one driver of what's going on, is the fact that people want to have zero accountability for their own group and just act like their actions and groups identifying as themselves. You get what I'm saying? Like the ADL, they're, in my opinion, throwing Jews metaphorically under the bus harder than anybody, because they're identifying as a group. We are a Jewish group. And then they're just doing terrible work in the world, in my opinion. So it would be like if I did a white group or a Christian group and I started just doing terrible stuff, like politically, like that would be a way to sabotage my own ethnic or religious group. If I identified as a Christian group or a white group or whatever, I need to make sure I'm doing like really good work. And every week I'd look internally and be like, am I doing what I need to do? Since now I'm not just, I'm not just anomaly and representing myself. Now I'm representing my whole ethnic group or my whole religion. So I would be damn sure to be like, I have crazy responsibility now because I'm representing millions of people that look like me or think like me, They don't do that. They just keep screwing up and doing evil stuff and being like, oh, if you disagree with us, you're an anti-Semite. Like, there's nothing more wicked you could do to your own ethnic group than act that way, just like the LGBTQs. If you want gay people to be popular in America, the dumbest thing you could do is just start pumping hormones into like 6-year-olds, because now people are going to start to hate you. And it's not all their fault. I don't recommend hate. I recommend love and peace and finding a way to counter the narrative. But everybody has their own way of dealing with it, but I prefer not being hateful. And to end this live stream on a note that I think wraps it all together, I had a little back and forth with Kathy Griffin recently. If you don't know Kathy Griffin, she's a very lovely and successful comedian who, in my opinion, has gone absolutely unhinged in her pursuit against hating Donald Trump and right-wingers. And I think it's really affecting her physically and mentally. So she's, always getting in fights on Twitter. And she retweeted Alex Stein and said, this is Tucker Carlson's son, which it's not. Alex is not Tucker's son, but he was just joking. So I actually sent her a nice message and she responded. I think this is the future, folks. Instead of just being like, you're crazy, you're evil, blah, 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 I told her the truth. I said, I'll find the exact tweet if you want me to read it, because I don't want to mess it up. But I essentially, instead of just yelling at her and calling her names, I gave her the raw, unfiltered truth about what I think she's doing. And I actually got a response. I think I got through to her. All right, so I said to her, Kathy, as a former fan who grew up loving you, I'm going to be honest with you here. 1, that's not actually Tucker Carlson's son. He was joking. And 2, I said, change yourself to change the world. You will never be truly happy fighting right-wingers. Take care of yourself and heal within. So that almost goes harder than making fun of her, because I'm like, I used to like you, and I think you need to focus on yourself. And she responded to me. She said, blessings to you. And I've never seen her respond kindly to any right-winger, but she said blessings to me, and I said, God bless you, Kathy. Twitter is a crazy place, and there are millions of opinions flying around. Sometimes in pursuit of fighting the other side, we end up hurting ourselves. We can all do better. So, I didn't need to be hateful to Kathy Griffin, but perhaps I bet you that I made a bigger impact on her in a positive direction, more than any other right-winger, because I hit her in her heart and her soul. I said, Kathy, I don't hate you. I actually like you. I know you're a good person in there, but you're driving yourself insane fighting with right-wingers, and you need to take care of yourself. She doesn't even know if I'm left-wing or right-wing. I could be a left-winger, to her. But I'm not. I'm just saying, it's like, I don't think she's a bad person. She's getting lost in the sauce. And I view the whole world that way. It's like, I try not to hate or bring myself to, I think a lot of people might not subscribe to this, but I think the devil wants you to hate. They want you to get angry. When you're angry and hateful, they could point to you and say, look, he's angry and hateful. I'm not going to say they want people to get violent, but it's like being violent is terrible and evil and horrible and just satanic. but also it's like now they can point and say, look, they did something bad, you know? So it's like the best thing you could do is be peaceful, healthy, happy, and address the situation with strength. True strength is not anger, in my perspective. Anger only works, or being scared only works if there's a boulder falling on your head and you got to run away. But if you're in a boxing match, you can't be angry and emotional. You lose in sports. If you're in, basketball, you get a technical. If you're angry when you play golf, you're going to lose. So it's like anger is not really that cool. I'm not saying nobody gets angry and everybody's perfect, but it's like anger is not strength and hate is not strength. True strength is being so comfortable with yourself that you can stand there against your enemy and tell them the truth and pierce their soul with reality to the point where they break out of their little satanic spell. So, that's what I think about everything and with all groups, everything. I know this is quote unquote controversial stream, but I mean nothing but love. And I think tough love and reality will bring peace to this world. I don't think open borders and saying I'm not racist is going to make America better. I think tough national security with a compassionate heart will make it. But we can't just sit there and leave the border of Yuma, Arizona open and say, well, I'm so not racist. It's the same metaphor to what I'm talking about with anti-Semitism and Judaism and non-religious Jews. It's like we could sit here and play all these little games and just say, oh, I'm such a nice person. But it's like, it's really not nice to just keep falling down the wrong path and not addressing these realities, which don't get brought up very much. I think it's the nicest thing you could do and most peaceful thing you could do, because things won't change in this country or all around the world until we face these tough truths and realize we do have a lot in common. But we can't just keep fighting all the time, calling each other racist and anti-Semites. Like, it's all so dumb. Like, I'm at a point now where I look at Twitter and it doesn't even bother me because it doesn't even affect me, because I'm so far detached from the reality of left-wingers and right-wingers fighting. I'm constantly able to break the matrix of it, because I'm just like, I'm not going to just fight all the time. What am I going to do? Fight with Kathy Griffin on Twitter for 3 hours? That sounds terrible. You know what I'm saying? What am I going to fight with Ralph Nadler, Jerry Nadler, whatever his name is? It's like, it's just like, it's such a drag. And some people are so caught in that. They don't even know they're doing it. Like, if you're a right winger and all you do is go to CPAC and Turning Point and, you do this for 6 years, you might not know you're caught in an echo chamber, but that's because your whole economy is based on that. If you're Kathy Griffin or you're Nadler, God knows some of these people that have been there for decades, maybe, you have become a terrible person, but also it's like you're doing the same thing for so long that it's just what you do. You fight with right wingers and you get paid for it. You know what I'm saying? Something bad happens that the right wing did, you get a bunch of fundraising. The left wingers do something crazy, now you get to be in office. It's like a lot of these people, it's a marketing scheme. If left wingers do something so terrible and so stupid, it's going to affect all our lives in the negative. But the GOP low key will probably be like, shit, well, that helps us in November. And if something terrible happens in the right wing and we do something terrible for the country, the left wingers are behind closed doors like, yeah, that's terrible, but that does make us look better. And a lot of these people are caught in that paradigm because that's the game they've been playing for a year or 10 years or 20 years. And, they might not even know they're doing it, but it's like they're so detached from reality that they don't even know how bad some people are hurting and how shitty the cities are getting, and, how bad in some cases like racial tensions got when everybody started burning stuff down. Like they're playing this game. So I think it's our job to try to, break people out of it and create our own narrative. Instead of chasing the tail on the donkey, for lack of a better term, creating our own narrative and, totally just sidestepping what we're supposed to do. Hopefully I can help some people do that with this live stream. Appreciate you guys so much. And real quick before I end, I just want to put something on the screen. This is patreon.com/raretalk. Thank you to everybody supporting on there. Thank you to everybody supporting on Facebook, anywhere. I'm just going to be transparent before I leave, and I'm not playing the victim, but I know this year I've talked to a lot of people who have painting companies, this and that, merch companies. Like, it seems like everybody is down this year, because the economy's down, stocks are down, 401ks are down, and when there's less money in America, there's less money going out. You know what I'm saying? My pockets are tighter than they were last year. Last year I had a lot more money this year I'm like, whoa, let's slow it down. So I really appreciate everybody this year. I'm not saying you have to, because I know everybody's tight and it's not just me, but this year's been tough. My YouTube's down like 70%, not in views, but in monetization. My Facebook's down like 50%. Instagram's trying to ban me from monetization now. But it's all good. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying I do fully appreciate patreon.com/raretalk. and anybody on YouTube, Facebook, whatever, supporting, because without that, I wouldn't be able to be here, and I am able to do full-time stuff. And for this live stream, I spent 2 to 3 hours, if not more, getting the information. I spent an hour or two making my intro and printing out a bunch of reports and stuff. I'm not bragging, but I would say I think this is at this point one of the most underrated shows. I mean, we're doing well, and it's, you know, I've gotten almost 1 billion views, so I'm not complaining. But, you know, at this point, I feel like there's a lot of other shows out there that don't do the type of research, and they have full teams, they have staff, they have lighting, they have 50 people work for them. I do it all myself independently, 100%, every part of it, production, research, filming, everything. So I appreciate your support, because I don't care how tight I'm cutting it, because it's not that bad. I'm fine. I'm doing well. But I'll continue to do it, and I just appreciate everybody on patreon.com/raretalk or Facebook or however buying stuff from dreamrare.com, because I'm going to keep doing it regardless. I'm fine. But yeah, it's been a little tougher this year, and they're always trying to crack down. So I'm very grateful, and I work really hard regardless of what's going on with the monetization. So I only have one gear. Appreciate y'all. God bless you. And share this video if you like it. It'll be on Dream Rare Podcast later on Spotify, Apple, and wherever podcasts.